a lot of it is practice or conditioning. However, the way that CIF and the way that our BVAL meeting went and has it broken up is by tiers of sports. So, for example, there's certain things that you can do in the purple tier, which would be like golf. I believe swimming is also like a purple tier. So there are certain things that are in certain tier colors that you can actually do and participate in. And so, yeah, Mr. Castaneda put the schedules are solidified and we'll be sending out an email Monday via remind. So a lot of it's going to depend on the tier that we're in and what we can offer. So everything's broken up by specific schedules and then there's a time frame. But some sports are able to be played in the purple tier, while other sports like wrestling or football we might need to be in a different tier in order to participate in those sports. So it's kind of a little bit confusing, I know, but the idea is as we ease up in our tiers with the color, we'll be able to participate and play more sports. So we're balancing what we can offer and not offering everything all at once, but rather how can we offer some of the sports that are available immediately and then ways to offer some of the other ones where we need to be in a lighter tier later to give students more opportunities.
And it kind of feels like, just from my outsider perspective, like the sports that are allowed in like the purple tier are the ones that are like less contact, less, just so that we can get some students playing, and then the sports with more contact, we need to wait until we're in a better tier. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, and we do have hard cancellation points because we can't have every sport be available at the last season and then teams for anything. So it does have hard stop times for being able to offer sports. So it is the one unfortunate thing. So we can continue to do conditioning, expanding hopefully our numbers and cohorts and stuff and being able to open up that. But as far as offering actual games and stuff, we are going to follow BVAL's schedule that's been created and have those hard cutoff times. Good question.
Awesome. And thank you to Nicole, our lovely webmaster, who just put in the chat. Gosh, if you haven't seen how lovely our website is, then I suggest you go take a look. So Jessica, to go back to your question about enrollment, Nicole just sent me the link from our website that has the enrollment information. So I just popped it in the chat there to all attendees.
And also, eighth graders will probably be hearing something in the first 2 weeks of February. So we're working with our feeder middle schools. But in case you're not going to one of the feeder middle schools, definitely check out the website as well.
Okay, great. Our next question is, looking ahead to the fall schedule, when hopefully we are back, will you be thinking about incorporating any kind of orientation or programs for all students to set the tone for the type of community that Del Mar is? At that point, there will be a new freshman class, a sophomore class that hasn't been on campus, and a junior class that has only spent 6 months. Oh my gosh, reading it makes my chest feel tight in like a sad way. Yeah, it's very true. Thank you, Lynn, for pointing that out. Larry, do you want to take this one or do you want me to?
I think we both can take this one because I think it'll in both of our areas. I think, the moment that we can come back to campus and whatever that looks like, and I think that there's a lot of hope with the vaccine that we're definitely looking at what fall could look like, if not sooner. But I think to Lynn's point, having some sort of bridging opportunities for students who have never been to our campus or getting acclimated to our campus, or even our incoming freshmen who are going to be joining. I mean, it's going to be a huge transition for everybody. And so I think what we need to really look at are what are ways that we can utilize what we have to really make students feel comfortable. So for example, it could be really leveraging our Dons crew to maybe even work with larger than just the freshman population. It could be also working with the sophomore population. We visited schools in a school in Southern California back in January. One of the, or not January, we're in January now, last year.
Yeah.
But one of the schools opened their campus and had kind of like a almost open house for students to find their locker, to walk
Hmm.
around campus and stuff. And so I think as we start to look at what fall of 2021 looks like, I think having those opportunities for students to come on campus, meet people, create those relationships, I think will be really important. And our teachers, especially in distance learning this school year, did an amazing job really trying to create those foundation relationships by
Hmm.
spending the first couple weeks on just getting to know their students and trying to really build these relationships. And even when I pop into classes to this day, I see that they're still trying to build these relationships and still trying to make connections. So
Hmm.
some of the things that I see.
Yeah. One of my, you know, in a perfect world, one of my wishes is that come springtime, of this year, sorry, my, getting blinded by the sun. There we go. Um, we can actually, hopefully maybe collaborate. For those of you who don't know what Dawn's Crew is our freshmen. They lead our freshman orientation, they lead our freshman study session. When we're on campus, they do a lot of work with freshmen. And so maybe, combining forces with ASB and Dawn's Crew, it's a lot of kids between the two programs, it's about 100 upperclassmen. And really utilizing those kids to maybe bring like small groups of freshmen and do like tours or stuff safely in the springtime so that we can get our current freshmen their bearings a little bit, just so that they feel like connected to our campus. They've seen it, they've been on it, they, can identify some things. Um, and then, it's interesting that you bring up the sophomores because I work with the ASB students, obviously. And so my sophomores, I feel like are, they're really rising to this occasion as like trying to mentor these freshmen and really take them under their wing. And I see them as like these, I feel like way more experienced high school students than when I see it in writing that they've only been on campus for 6 months. I'm like, oh man, that's true. Um, so yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think that we're going to have to, as things ease up and we can do more whenever that may be, whether it's spring, summer, before the fall comes, I would really like to see small groups come on and do tours, do some mingling and bonding, maybe meet some teachers. I don't know. One of my freshmen actually brought that up yesterday, maybe having an opportunity to see some teachers' faces and do it safely. So it is something that we're thinking about. And if you've been on our campus, you know that we have this energy at Del Mar and this community that's really special. And I don't think that's lost. I hope it's not. I know that some of it's gone in distance learning, but I hope that when we return that will help us kind of bring back that community feeling because it is important. I think it's a great point that you brought up there, Lynn. So thank you. Okay. What were the results from last night's board meeting about returning, and what is the general consensus of Del Mar teachers to returning to classes? I understand it is more of a union/contract thing.
Yeah, well, I think as of right now, we're looking at staying in distance learning for the time being. I'll be honest, I didn't finish the board meeting, and I know it went for 5 hours, so I'm sure
You have to
there's a
have
lot
you have to
to talk
stay up
about.
late.
I know,
Mhm.
God willing to everyone who
Yeah.
participated. So, but I think the goal is obviously when it's safe, we want to allow everyone to come back. But right now, being that our numbers are high and units available in the hospitals seem to be low, it's not something that we're looking at this point. But I think the idea of moving to some sort of in-person office hours or possibly supports for some students is definitely something that our goal is and something that we're definitely trying to move towards. And then as far as teachers, I think talking to all the teachers at Del Mar, one of the things I constantly hear is if I could go back, like I'd be back and I'd be there. And it's a little easier, I feel like, from talking to teachers, that being in a classroom and working with students, it's a little easier. It's a little less planning. You get to see your students and being able to communicate and understand how they're doing. So I think that there's a desire to go back, but I think with the numbers the way they are, there's always this hesitation or fear. And so it's balancing and juggling those pieces. And I think it's a really hard time to be in for everybody. And so our goal is obviously to bring people back, but with the opportunity that things are going to be safe and stuff. And so I appreciate all the parties who are working on making that happen, because I think that's really essential for us to not only come back, but we don't want to be like other districts or other places around the nation where they're coming back and then they're retracting and then coming back and retracting, because I think that does damage as well.
Yeah. I think it's so hard to speak for like the consensus of teachers and just staff in general, because I think, you know, in the pandemic, everybody's comfort level is so different. And so it's you have this weight of like, I miss my students, I miss my school, I miss my classroom, I miss my job, you know, like feeling, you know, connected to people, but also your comfort level with the pandemic. So yeah, we definitely miss our students for sure.
Yeah. And then I got this update too. The board is going to reconvene in late February and early March to sort of reassess where we are, if it's possibly safe to come back. And again, that might look like 4, 5, or 3 weeks out, depending on where we are. So I think they're always going to keep looking at it and assessing where things are, having conversations, and then making decisions on what's best for students and staff. So.
Awesome. I can take this next question regarding pictures. This is a good reminder too. So February 3rd is school pictures for grades 9, 10, and 11. Does that apply to sales students? If yes, can we get more information about location and time? Absolutely. So yes, this applies to every one of our students if they'd like their picture in the yearbook, and if they'd like an ID card, if their family would like to order pictures, this will be their opportunity to get their picture taken. So we would love to have our sales students there as well. I will be actually sending out more information. I'm going to move so this, there we go. But about where it will be, it's going to be in our back parking lot. So I will actually be sending out a map, because you bring up a good point. There's a lot of students who have not been to our campus yet, including our freshman families. So I'll be sending out a map when it gets closer. Today in our newsletter that's going out, there is a schedule with broken up by last name. So that will be going out today in Mr. Lopez's newsletter. And then next week, I'll be sending that schedule out again, along with a map. I even might go on campus and take a video kind of driving through of where you'll go, so that it'll just be a little bit easier to visualize. But this will be your opportunity to get your student's picture in the yearbook, to get them a student ID card, and to order pictures if you'd like. So you won't be able to order pictures before or that day. They'll send me a link after. So you haven't missed it. Don't worry if you want to order school pictures. That will come to me later after your student's picture is taken, and I'll send out that information. But if you're not reading Mr. Lopez's newsletter, that's where a lot of this information goes out. And then also whatever email we have on file for you in our Aries system, I will send it out via school messenger on email. So if check your spam. I've heard sometimes school messenger emails go to spam. So make sure that you're checking there as well, because I'll be sending that out next week, the video and the map. But yes, we would love everybody to be photographed, especially our students who are either new to our school or who are our freshmen, because we don't have pictures of them right now in Aries. And, you know, if they don't have their camera on during class, it's nice for teachers to be able to check their Aries account and see a photo of them, so they can kind of put a face to a name. It just makes it a little bit more personal. So yeah, we would love to have everybody photographed.
Good question.
Will seniors receive an ID card as well? Another good question. We are not holding a separate picture day for seniors just to get ID cards. I'm working with Now and Forever, who is our studio that took the senior photos, to excuse me, to print ID cards with their senior photo on them. And then I will find a way to distribute those. So that's kind of what a lot of our schools are doing in the district. So I'm working with them to figure out how we can get that way seniors don't have to come to campus to take another photo when they've already been photographed for their senior photo. If your student is a senior and they're in need, or any student for that matter, and they're in need of an ID card right now, have them email me if it's before picture day. If they need one urgently, we can try to get them one on campus. but seniors will not be having a separate picture day for ID cards. So I will send out more correspondence once I have those in my hands. The senior deadline for senior portraits is today. So after today, after all of our seniors have been photographed, I will get an update on those ID cards, and they will look so nice because they'll be in their like senior photo attire on their ID card. Oh my gosh. It'll be like a little fancy fun ID card. It's never happened before in the history of ID cards. I love it. Okay, that's all of our questions in the Q&A. Please keep them coming if you have them. I love that little red notification saying that we have a question. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Lopez, do you have any announcements while we wait? Or any other things you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about construction while we're here, because I know that's, I mean, if you drive, oops, there we go. Sorry, I was going to change my background so you can see.
Oh yeah, show us.
So the admin building, which you might be able to hear behind me. So this will be our eventual admin building. So it's completely demolished, gone. So that's kind of what it's going to look like.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, so the estimated time we're looking at in the construction world is going to be next year. So I'm being told around March, April of 2022. So fingers crossed. I mean, that's the one positive thing in all this, is that our construction projects are moving pretty quickly along. And then the library is, they're starting work on the library now, the expansion of that. I don't have designs on what the inside would look like, but our goal is to make it very open, have some movable furniture. And then for those of you who've been to the library near San Jose State, the Martin Luther King Library, they have some of the rooms that you can rent and little spaces for students. So the goal is to maybe have something like that if we have the funds to be able to do it. So these are kind of some of our big items that are coming through. And then our retrofitting of our classes is completed. So that's been done. The next step is to obviously update some of our classrooms. So that's somewhere in the future. And then our kitchen, which is almost going to be complete next month, we'll have that up and running. So we're excited about that. And the pool's up and done. So we've had a lot of great things happening in the last year or so.
It's amazing. I love this building. I love the way it looks. I'm so excited. There is a question here. How do we know if Del Mar received the yearbook photo we took at Now and Forever? The studio did not send a confirmation email that Del Mar received it. So this is a great question. I have a list of all students who have been photographed at Now and Forever. They will be sending me an updated list next week once the deadline is passed today. So if your student, if for some reason we don't have it on file that they were even photographed, I'll reach out to them because we will have a makeup day on campus. If you're just worried that we didn't receive the photo that you chose for the yearbook, but your student was photographed, we'll reach out to the student. So the yearbook advisor is actually the one who does all this. She'll get a big file of all the senior portraits that have been selected for the yearbook by the students. And she'll go through them and make sure that they fit the guidelines that we set, you know, the right background, the right outfit and whatnot. If it says that a student did not select a yearbook photo, I believe she'll reach out to them. So I wouldn't worry, as long as your student was photographed, that's the best thing. We will make sure that they get into the yearbook. So as long as they were photographed and we get, you know, all of those photos, it's totally fine. So Mrs. Chase is bound and determined to get as many students in the yearbook as possible. So if she sees that maybe a photo wasn't selected or wasn't confirmed selected, she will either select one for them or contact them so that they get into the yearbook. And just to touch on the yearbook a little bit, and then I'll get to this next question, but it just made me think of it. We are doing another late release for our yearbook. So your student, so if you're form a student who's not a freshman, you may remember that we got the yearbooks from last school year this fall. And that was obviously because of the pandemic, school shut down. It kind of messed with our yearbook deadlines. The silver lining was that we were able to cover our graduation ceremony in the yearbook, which was really awesome. It was actually beautiful. The photos were beautiful. The spread was great. We got almost every senior from last year in the yearbook at the graduation ceremony, which was really cool. Because if we, in normal times, we actually cut off the yearbook at about March. So we missed some really big school events that don't get into the yearbook. So doing that late release allowed us to cover the whole rest of the school year. So we kind of liked that idea. And just with having so few things this year, we wanted to make sure that we gave the entirety of the school year to get covered in the yearbook. So if you're ordering a yearbook for 2021 for this school year, it will be released probably in the summer. I don't think it will come out in the fall. I think it will come out in the summer, and they will actually mail it home to you. So our yearbook advisor is actually writing up some correspondence as we speak. She's working on it for me, and we'll get that out in the next couple weeks so that we can cover as much of the school year as we can in the yearbook. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, I know that the school recently worked with teachers on diversity issues and Black Lives Matter. Can you share how that went, and will it translate into teaching practices and student education? Good question.
Yeah, really great question. So this school year, we as a site and as a district have really put an emphasis on equity and inclusion and really addressing the needs of Black and Brown students in our school system. And so for us as a site, we have made it sort of a goal and a priority to not only understand bias, but then to look at what we can do as a site to really help and improve. And tackling this issue and trying to work on it, there's no simple, easy solution. And the fact that we're talking about it and talking about it regularly, I think is really important. So one of the things that we have done is our departments have really challenged themselves to really take on, well, what is it that we can do? And so like I attend our science department meetings, and science has really said, well, how do we talk about race and bring up issues about how we need to be anti-racist in a science classroom? And so those are some of the conversations that we're having within departments. The PD training that we did as a staff around courageous conversations, I'll have Courtney tell her perspective, but I think being a part of the equity team and then also attending that, it really put things into perspective, because having conversations about race can be very difficult, but we need to make them more comfortable and something that we talk about regularly. And so for us, it was really not putting the onus on individuals, but rather let's look at the timeline. Let's look at how people of color have been treated and the systems of oppression that have been created and built in this society. And what are things that we can do as a school site and or as individuals to really say, well, this isn't right. What can we do, or how do we do better for our students? And so those are some of the things that we've been talking about. One example that I'll give, which I know doesn't really address the issue as a whole, but one of the things is, as we started to look within our own student handbook, one of the things when we were in person was students who are dressed inappropriately have to find new clothes to change into. And so typically what this means is students who are either wearing colors that are not allowed at school or things that are deemed inappropriate are usually have been in the past either sent home or told to switch out of their clothes. And so for us as a school and as a district, we really have done more to say, well, this isn't right, because the students who continue to be impacted by this, I mean, we're primarily a Latinx Hispanic population. And so these are students of color who are the ones who are experiencing this at larger numbers than white students. And so one of the things we did is, how do we make the dress code more accessible for everyone. So rather than having appropriate or terms that are more ancient, like midriff or things like that, we've scrapped a lot of that stuff and have been more inclusive so that it represents, here's what is the bare minimum that we need for students to show up. And then also, rather than relying on students to have to find clothes, students may not have accessible clothes that they can change into. And so we need to take more of the onus back on ourselves and say, if there's something inappropriate, we can provide you with something. So those are some of the systems that we're looking at. Do we have a long way to go? 1000%. But the best part about it is that our entire staff is very committed to this work. And it's not something that gets fixed in a day, but it's something that we have to talk about, and we have to be willing to talk about it. And so we're really starting to we're at the tip of the iceberg right now. I think we still have some digging to get down to the nitty gritty, but we are more comfortable having those conversations and really talking about what that means. Cord, I don't know if you have your own perspectives or want to share that.
Yeah. I definitely echo everything that you said. And I definitely want to mention that I appreciate, from the perspective of someone who's part of your admin team, and then also somebody who's, been a teacher, the constant emphasis this year on anti-racism, on equity work, on, all of these things that we said we were going to do in the summer, that we decided on, that were important to us, that we wanted to put our energy and work behind. And oftentimes, everybody knows how that goes, right? You set goals in the summer, and then life happens and things happen, and the school year unfolds, and you don't always get to the things that you say you want to get to. But this is one of the things that Mr. Lopez, and then as an extension, the admin team, and then the teachers have really committed to. And I've seen it in department meetings. I've seen it in our PDs. Mr. Lopez and I are both on our site equity team that meets weekly. I lead the student equity team with a couple other teachers that also meets weekly, and we're working with students, listening to their opinions and perspectives and voices. And so this is not something that we just wanted to say we're going to do, and then we, when it got hard, we stopped, or, this is something that we're really, really committed to. And I think that, like Mr. Lopez said, it's the tip of the iceberg. We're not perfect. We're always learning. We're always working on this work. And we will continue to work on this for years. That's how this goes, right? But I appreciate the constant emphasis on this. At our staff meetings weekly, we always have a piece that's dedicated to equity work. So, and Courageous Conversations was amazing. I loved being able to have that time with my colleagues and getting to know people I don't normally talk to too much, especially that we're not on campus anymore. It was really nice to be able to hear from the perspectives of my colleagues, and hear their experiences and their stories about how racism has impacted them. So, we're working on it. Again, I will echo what Mr. Lopez said. We're not perfect, but I do appreciate the way that we have really stuck to this and made sure that we are putting our, for lack of a better term, our money where our mouth is. Like we said, we're going to do it, so we're doing it. And so that's exciting to me, because I think that, when we go back on campus, I think things will even show more what we've been doing. So it's kind of hard in distance learning to see the benefits of what you're doing all the time. But I think when we go back on campus, it will be even more. So thank you for that question. All righty. Switching gears way to the other side. The yearbook. This is a good question. We're going back to the yearbook. What's going to be in the yearbook? That is a great question. That is one reason we are trying to get everybody photographed. We want everyone to have their picture in the yearbook. We are working on getting students to submit photos. If your students have any photos of what they are doing in distance learning, whether it be they have a job and they're going to work, when they're not in school, or maybe they want to show their cool distance learning setup at home, or maybe you go on, family hikes on the weekends, and that's like your tradition. And if you have a photo of it, please have them send it to us. We are looking for all kinds of photos to put in the yearbook. I have a feeling this year's yearbook we'll have a little bit more emphasis on our senior class just because it will cover graduation. It will obviously have senior portraits, and we want to make sure that they get their last and final high school yearbook that really, even though it may be slim, that really kind of closes out their high school experience. Um, so I wish I had a better answer, but we are working on it. Um, we talk about it almost daily, Mrs. Chase and I. She's our great yearbook advisor. We just formed a group in my ASB class who's also working to support the yearbook. So yes, we are doing our best. It will be smaller, and that is part of that correspondence that she's going to send out next week. The prices actually might be changing, so we'll be refunding people who've already purchased, and then kind of backtracking because we obviously don't want to charge you for a full book that you may not be getting. So there are a few changes coming to the yearbook situation, but we want to make sure if you're like me, or if your student is like me and they're very nostalgic and they want to have the final yearbook or one of their high school yearbooks, no matter what's in it, we still want to put one out for you. And hopefully we'll look back in 10 years at this yearbook and we'll say, wow, I'm so glad that that's over, and not be still dealing with it. So that's kind of the story on the yearbook, but there will be more information coming out next week. So stay tuned. Make sure you check your email. Make sure you read the newsletter because that's where it will be. And is it too late to purchase an ASB package? No, we are always selling ASB packages. We'd love to get those in your hands. The ASB packages, just for those who don't know, depending on which one you get, your student gets some Del Mar gear. The yearbook is included in one of them. We actually changed up our packages this year, so they are less expensive. They obviously don't include an ASB card, which usually gets your student into games and dances and all of that kind of stuff. But we wanted to make sure that we still had them, because when you purchase an ASB package, that money goes back to the students. So it goes back to our ASB program. They use it to put on events. They use it to do all the things that the ASB class does. So it does directly benefit your student. It's like a win-win. They get some gear and some fun stuff, and the money they spend goes back into their events. So everybody's a winner in that situation. So they are available on our website, on the student store, and yes, they are always available. I'd love for you to buy one. Okay. Back to the conversation topic. You shared some websites in your newsletter that talk about anti-racism. Can you explain why you chose those websites that you did, since one of the podcasts calls out specific races and groups?
Yeah. So I think for the resources that I shared in the newsletter on some of the things that we as a staff with different individuals we've talked about and we've resourced. So a lot of things that are things that we have been talking about regularly. So the podcast one, I think, is the Nice White Parents one, which, as someone who's white, I know the first time I listened to the first episode, I was like, what the heck is this? But I think the more that we listen to it, we just have to understand that it's not about calling out, but how do we call each other in and say, like, if this is the way that people are feeling, how do we understand and get to know where people are feeling? And then what are things that we can do within our own power to really help and support individuals of color? And so I think for me, this, since the George Floyd incident and things that have been happening within the nation around the treatment of Black people specifically, I think we have taken it more upon ourselves of how do we educate ourselves? How do we start to have the conversation? And really, the resources and stuff I provided is just so that we can start having conversations similar to this. So I think it's difficult to hear and it can be difficult to talk about. And one of the first things I say when I talk to people about it is, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, I know that can sometimes be a very difficult conversation for a lot of people, but I heard, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago where they sort of related it to when you talk about cancer and there's breast cancer awareness. It's not saying that other cancers don't matter, but the real focus is around, well, what about breast cancer do we need to talk about and address? And so I think for us in having these conversations, sometimes it can be a little difficult to a difficult pill to swallow, but it's something that we want to continue the conversation around and just make sure that we're having these conversations. And it's good to have questions, and it's good to have things that maybe get under our skin a little. But I think the best way of dealing with it is talking about it and saying, well, what was the purpose of that? Or what was the goal? And I think for me, it's opening up the conversation as we're doing now and just being able to say, well, what are people going through and how do we have these conversations and what are things that we can do? Because we're still navigating these issues as well, and how to talk about it, and then how can we support in our platform to move the conversations forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Lopez. I don't see any other questions, but we'll wait another minute or two to see if any others come up. I also just dropped a link in the chat. Thank you again to Nicole. Nicole is behind the scenes just running the show and sending me links that are fabulous. So if you have photos to send to the yearbook, I put the link in the chat, or yeah, I did put it in the chat. Miss Chase has actually set up a bit.ly link where you can directly send pictures to the yearbook. So yay.
Yeah. Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
If there's ideas, or, especially if you're a senior parent or just parent in general, if there's things that we can be doing as a site, or something where you're just like, here's my struggle. I was at the PTSA meeting last week, or I'm getting my days confused. It was this week, earlier this week. It was on Tuesday. But one of the things is giving parents an opportunity to talk and communicate and stuff. And so if there's things that we can do to help you on this call, or maybe if you're watching this, since it's being recorded, and there's things that we as a site can do to support you, definitely let me know. You can put it in the chat. You can put it in the Q&A. You can just message me directly. But I think we also see a very small glimpse of what's going on. But you guys, the parents, the kids who are actually dealing with things head on, we don't always get to see that. And so if there are things that we can do, definitely let me know.
That is a good segue into this question here. Will there be another food drive or a way to donate money or gift cards to Del Mar families that need it? So yes and no. We don't have another drive planned, but we always are accepting things. So if you are, I kind of say this to everybody who asks me this, but nothing gets wasted when you take it to our office. So if you are out and about and you see a gift card stand at Safeway and you're like, I'm going to grab another, like a couple Safeway gift cards, or if you have extra canned goods or whatever the case may be that fits for your family, and you take it to the office, we will use it. We love when we get requests from teachers, admin, people, anybody who will, usually they email me or Mr. Lopez, sometimes the assistant principals and the counselors, with families in need. We do partner with Awakening Church, who provides a lot of support for our families, but we also like to be able to just give things immediately. Like today, if someone emails me and says, we have a family in need, what can we support them with? I like to be able to say, send them to the office right now. They can get a gift card to get some groceries. And you may not be surprised, but this happens very regularly, especially in the pandemic. I would say every week I get at least 3 or 4 emails regarding families in need from our school community. And so it is nice to be able to have kind of a surplus of items in the office that we can, it might not be a lot. And, we obviously can't fix everything for our families, but we like to be able to support them in that moment. And so if you are out and you are able to give, gift cards are the easiest way. Just they're small, they're easy to hold in the office, and families can get whatever they need, whether it be diapers, food, toiletries, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, yes and no. We don't have another drive planned quite yet. Mr. Castaneda did a great job with the last one. He collected so many things, but we are always open to taking stuff. Oh, and Nicole put something in the chat. On behalf of the Ed Foundation, who funded the district equity grant, we're pleased to see Del Mar and the other schools making efforts to help families learn more about this topic and how we all work together to bring education and changes to our campus. Yes, thank you, Nicole, for pointing that out, and thank you to the Ed Foundation. They did give every site money to directly, to directly do that work. So it's really important to note. Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions, comments? Anybody? We want to make sure that your questions are answered. And just, I'm going to do a PSA that I've been doing lately, just because it makes me feel better. If you could tell your student to make sure that they're checking their Remind accounts and their school emails, that is where a lot of information goes out, especially if your student is a senior. I went into all senior history classes last week, and I reminded them of 2 very important deadlines coming up. Today is the deadline for senior portraits. We will have a 2-hour block appointment only on January 27th for makeup senior portraits if they did not makeup like they didn't like their picture, but makeup like they never took one, and they want to be in the yearbook. So if your student wants to still get into the yearbook as a senior and didn't make it to the studio by today, they can make an appointment and come do that on January 27th. The link is on their Remind account. I sent it out yesterday. I will send it out again today because today's the deadline for the studio, and it's also in their history class, Google Classroom. My slides are in there. The other deadline coming up, January 31st, is the deadline to order a cap and gown for graduation. So make sure they do that as well. The link is in those slides that their history teacher has linked in their Google Classrooms. Somebody said, thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here. I super appreciate it, Mr. Lopez, and I love doing these. It's nice to talk to everybody and get some questions answered. If you have any other questions, put them in the Q&A. If not, you can always email us. You can email anybody on our staff, really, and they'll be able to help you. But we are always happy to answer questions. We'll try to do another one of these maybe at nighttime in the coming weeks so we can catch more people. And as things unfold, we'll be communicating with you all, but it's so lovely to see everybody.
Yeah, we're also going to add this in the newsletter for this week. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, we are recording this, so we will pop this video into our newsletter. And again, if you're not reading the newsletter or getting the newsletter, I highly encourage you to check it out. It's also on our website. If you're not seeing it in your email, Nicole does a great job of updating our website like so fast. So things are usually available on there somewhere. If you're looking for a resource, I'm certain it lives on the website. Okay. I don't see any other questions. Rosa, I see your message. Thank you. It's nice to see everybody. All righty. If there's no other questions, I'm going to stop recording.